So what's the weather looking like down there?
The weather is great. The weather is great. So we're gonna get started.
Okay.
Yeah. So welcome to today's talk session. My name is Deidre Moss, and I am the host of Can We Talk. I'm an educator, motivator, and a talk connoisseur. Today, our talk session is focused on agriculture and food security. But first, I want to say that again, if you're new to our page, Can We Talk is all inclusive. We facilitate a holistic talk because we know that we operate within a global community. We live in a global village. We may be of different cultures, but some of our issues are the same. And when we talk about these issues, we learn just how closely we can identify with each other. Therefore, Can We Talk celebrates these differences and our similarities. For our last session of Can We Talk, our team member Nikki Williams of Trinidad and Tobago talked about agriculture and food security issues in her country, and within the context of the Caribbean region. So she talked about her role as a Thought for Food ambassador and the organization's role for supporting food security. So today, I have the honor of introducing a panel of guests. Trevor Claiborn, host of BIAG, and he can definitely get into explaining what his podcast is about. Daily Bread podcast slash Farmer Brown, the MC, and co-founder of Black Soil. So he's gonna, because I know I'm mixing up some of the wording. And then John Henry Harris, a journalist for the Black Boss Network. And I'm so excited to have them here. We have like an international panel today. And so at this time, I will pass the virtual mic to our guests to have them introduce themselves. Guests, take over from here.
They said food flips harder than anything you can mention. Fresh up out the field, then whip it up in the kitchen. My garden game real, no fabrication of fiction. Sustainable strategies, the only thing that I'm pitching. Farmer Brown on the mound for 9 innings, I'm winning. My yield after harvest is splendid, I want the pennant. It don't go sour, gravy like grease and flour. But I prefer that organic straight from the planet power. I'm a beast, grow hard. Supply your feast, farmyard game in these streets. Please compete. I wish you would try to grow more food than me, cause win or lose, it's 2 times more food to eat. So let's get it. If you're really with it, to the nitty gritty, going green off in the city, chopping up game with the Bahama committee. My veggies come out pretty. Yeah, I do my ditty. First, I just like to say peace to the B1 family across the diaspora. I'm Farmer Brown, the MC, representing what we call Kentucky in the states. Co-host of B1 Ag, where we talk about Black agricultural production, marketing, education, economics, and nutrition for the B1 family.
Greetings. My name is John Henry Harris. I am a journalist with the Black Boss Network, which runs through Dr. Boyce Watkins News Network. I also grew up farming with my grandfather. So I have a very insightful connection with agriculture as well as agriculture advocacy, because I do believe that through agriculture, we can definitely achieve social and economic freedom. So hello to all out there.
Thank you. Thank you so much for those introductions. And also thank you for that rap, man. Thank you. Thank you so much. And can we talk about agriculture and food security?
Yes, so where do you start? There's no civilization that exists without the ability of the inhabitants of that civilization to prepare their food. Our ancestors, whatever part of diaspora we're coming from, were the ones that mastered the ability to cultivate food, fuel, and fiber, which are the components of agriculture. We find ourselves today, especially up here in the States, where we represent a group that is the most food insecure. Before the COVID-19 pandemic, which we'll probably get into a little later, our households represented 1 out of 7 households were food insecure. After the pandemic, it became what, 2 out of 5. And so we really want to address this issue. And we also understand, I mean, politics has a place, Hope has a place, but then just really getting in the ground, getting our prints in the mud is ultimately what's going to provide this food security that we speak of. And this is all attained through agriculture.
And also, I just want to add that, growing your own food, agriculture, farming, this is ancient knowledge. This is one of our first survival skills. Everything that we need to survive and thrive was given to us on this earth. And, through just living and I guess becoming more digital and advanced, so to speak, we've gotten away from the land, and it's imperative that we do put our focus back on the land and kind of like get back to the basics, because we take for granted that when you go to that your whatever restaurant or drive through, that they're going to be open and food is going to be available. So we need to just ensuring ourselves that we can procure and grow our own food, because it's different. It's a big difference between being, maybe you might be broke, but if you're broke and hungry, now you really have a problem.
Awesome. And I love what you both said. And I want to pinpoint what you said, Mr. Harris, about how we've moved away from the land. And in my contact, sorry, in the Bahamas, and I would say I would want to touch the Caribbean in general. We kind of moved away from agriculture and focus on other industries, and we see that now we're seeing the importance of the agricultural industry. And so that's definitely an important point that you made. We need to get back to the land. And so I'm going to touch the first point, and both of you can touch this. So your background, tell us about your organization, your program, and what does agriculture and food security mean to you?
And so first, so I'm rather late, so I'm 40. I grew up North American culture. I grew up in the age of Michael Jordan and rap music in the 80s. In the community I grew up in, agriculture wasn't something that was discussed. And actually, our first context of agriculture was seeing it through the auspice of a social studies book. These would be pictures of slavery. It would depict these black and white pictures of our ancestors in disparaging positions. And so, in class, I had a choice of this picture on the wall of this man bouncing a basketball, slam dunking, or this rapper running across stage, or these pictures of what looks like some miserable people in a farmyard. And so subconsciously at that time, it was a no-brainer to deviate far, far away from these disparaging pictures of somebody in the field. And then, so Mr. Harris and I actually met doing hip hop music. So we both interned with Arista and Motown Records. We lived in Atlanta, Georgia for a while, and this is like the black music mecca of North America. Toured around the country, as we like to say up here. We turned up for a while, got to live that lifestyle that we thought we wanted to. Mr. Harris has a different experience as an athlete. But saying that to say we were both fortunate, or if you want to say unfortunate, to pursue the paths that we grew up thinking that, black males or melanated males were supposed to pursue. And it was only until I was in my late 20s that the concept of environmental science and, just our relationship with the environment came to my attention. And so fast forward, we turned up for a while in big city Atlanta, toured around, and I ended up back at home, and I was a janitor for a few years. And I will say that was probably one of the most humbling but rewarding positions I've ever held in my life, just understanding how important, as long as you have messes being made, you're always going to need somebody to clean them up. And that analogy applies to pretty much everything. So as we're talking about food security, who are the cleaners, who are the custodians, who are the stewards? It will be the farmers. And so after a few years back in Kentucky cleaning, a few friends and I decided we wanted to create a lawn care company and expand it into an environmental restoration company, because the communities we stayed in, there's a lot of distressed properties. I don't want to say low income, but they weren't as nice as the well-to-do people, as I would say. And so it was around that time I figured, hey, somebody told me I could get a scholarship going to school. And so I went to school in my mind, okay, I'm gonna just go here long enough to get this scholarship, get a little accreditation and do this environmental science thing. And so every class I went to, and this was a community college, there was never any more than two Black folks, what we call Black folks up here, just a generic term. And it was after the first semester, it was a brother from Detroit up in Michigan that was in there. He left after the first semester. So for the next 2 years, I would be in these classes. And I'll say these were some of the most informative, exciting classes for me. Because once again, I hadn't been in the outdoors, outside of playing ball. I used to play sports when I was younger. And so just getting all of this new information, learning about water quality, soil quality, environmental restoration, it really enriched me as an individual. And so I got an opportunity to get a STEM scholarship. I don't know if they have the same term down there, science, technology, engineering, and math, to go to a HBCU. This is a historically Black college or university. And so in my mind, I've been around all these white folks for 2 years, learning about environmental science. So, I got opportunity to be around some of my people at a HBCU. But unfortunately, it was literally the same dynamic where we had an ag program. It was a beautiful program, Kentucky State University in the state of Kentucky, but it wasn't that many melanated people there. A lot of times we grew up seeing the HBCUs as the place to go chase girls, go to the parties, homecoming events. But a lot of times, and this is why these land grant institutions were created, to specifically educate people around land. And so that got my mind wondering, okay, where did this disconnect come from? And so this was around 2013, 2014. And so I had a professor hit me to some information that changed my life. He said, well, did you know that only 2 out of every 100 farmers in North America is Black? That's 2 out of 100. And so I'm not much to mathematician, but if you're in a country where 100% of people eat and only 2% of that demographic, whether you're purple, green, yellow, whatever color, is producing it, you can see all sorts of economic, social, and health implications of that horrible dynamic. And sadly, that number's down now to 1.4% of 100%. And so, and I don't want to talk your head off, but I got to give you a little background of how we got into this work. And so from that point, this is where I derived the concept of Farmer Brown the MC. I had spent 15 years pursuing music, touring. And so, I'm in class with 18-year-olds and 19-year-olds, and I felt like an idiot because, I really didn't know much about agriculture other than you plant a seed, you grow it, you milk cows for milk. And so I had a very rudimentary understanding of agriculture, but it was through really being appalled by that, our low representation within agriculture, especially knowing our ancestors built the wealth of this hemisphere, through free labor or slavery or however you create that narrative. And so once again, going back to these social studies books, when Mr. Harris and myself were growing up, it was like, how do you counter this? You can go yell at the top of buildings, hey, y'all, we need to grow food. But we know we're in a digital age. We're in an age where media influences people, whether we want to acknowledge it or not. Melanated people, especially on this side of the world, we engage with media 4 times more than every other group on the planet. And so, as to not come across as this trope of the mad Black man, telling people we need to start growing, I came up with the character Farmer Brown the MC. And John Harris came up with Jay Sunpower. And Jay Sunpower, and he'll tell you a little bit more about that, is more just around the science and STEM. So Farmer Brown is more just, it was a research project, actually. So the original research was to reach 300 3rd through 5th graders. And my hypothesis was, can you use hip hop audio and video productions to engage 3rd through 5th graders in agriculture? Instead of their first experience being, seeing these disparaging pictures, you come up with a colorful character. We're musical people. We're colorful people by nature. And so can you infuse these dynamics to really just drive the point of why agriculture is important? And so the original goal was 300. I achieved that on my first presentation. This is back in April 2016. So since then, we've reached more than 30,000 3rd through 5th graders, as well as family members and community members. More than 250 presentations in multiple states across the U.S. And I will say, to cut the dip away, this is beautiful to even have this conversation with you in another part of this hemisphere. It's an indicator for both of us that, okay, because this is a hard task. And I know you'll be able to touch on this more as we have this discussion. but just really getting this word out, about in creative ways. We see that popular media, likes to create this narrative that we're needy, we're begging, hey, can you just come and help us? But we really want to stress to our people that our ancestors, our genes, our DNA is a part of this land, just like the trees and mountains. And so the degree that we can see, it's one thing somebody telling you versus you internalizing how important this aspect of our lives is. And so that's what Farmer Brown MC is about. And Mr. Harris can tell you a little bit more about B1 Ag.
Now, now my agriculture journey started. Whether Farmer Brown came into the agriculture a little later, I came in a lot earlier because my grandfather farmed. So I'm a big guy. I've always been a big guy. So when I was young, I was eating, and my grandfather was just looking at me. So I keep eating, and he just kept looking at me. And he just said, "You eat too much, so you have to come with me." So that was my introduction into agriculture. I had to go help my grandfather grow some food because in his eyes, I ate too much. So I had to become part of what helped bring the food into the household. And what I learned with my grandfather farming, he was his own boss. He set his own hours. There's no one out there micromanaging you. And we ate well. We ate very, very well. I didn't realize this until later, after I went to college. I went to the University of Kentucky on a football scholarship. And that's when I first encountered ramen noodles. Like I never knew what ramen noodles were because I always ate well, fresh foods, whether we had a lot of money or no money, you couldn't tell by the way we were eating, steaks, and I'm talking about 4 or 5 different types of vegetables, big spreads. My grandmother really put it down. And I realized the power then in being able to refuel yourself, to feed yourself. When it's not tied to how much money is in your pocket or whatever outside source. This is something that you can do for yourself, and there's a lot of power in that. I got my degree in economics from the University of Kentucky, and while I was playing, I did get hurt, and I became involved in AmeriCorps, and that's when I really started doing my community outreach and going around to different schools and just mentoring, and teaching people, about conflict resolution, gender roles, just societal, just giving a different perspective on societal issues. And I was also rapping. I was a rapper as well, doing music. And when I met Trevor, he was still in high school. I was at the University of Kentucky, and we actually he was in a group, and we were managing him. And this relationship with me and Trevor has been going on for 25 years, with music as well as community outreach. As we got older, we still music is still in us, writing is still in us. We have a lot to say. We have messages that we want to get out to the world. And although the music industry is a young person's game, per se, we can still take these talents that we have and use them to educate. And that's what we decided to do. Food security is very important because I've seen it. I grew up very food secure. I grew up food secure. And when I left the nest, and went out into the world, that's when I seen, hold up, this isn't, I guess that my experience that I had growing up was not normal, not typical. And I didn't realize that, so not I want to be a savior or anything, but I would love to help the world, especially our communities, realize that that power lies within all of us. Like I said, it's an ancient knowledge. This is a survival skill, and we must, in these days and times, in this world, I would rather rely I rely on the dirt than my smartphone any day.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your background. And you made so many interesting points as you spoke. I made some notes. Mr. Claiborn, you said that you were introduced to agriculture, looking at the school books and looking at persons in the past and looking at slaves. And that was part of your first introduction to agriculture. Um, um, and that's very interesting. Um, and you also talk about Mr. Harris. You talk about your grandfather kind of introducing you to agriculture and understanding the importance of feeding yourself. And going back to Mr. Claiborne, when you talk about the statistics of farmers, I mean that was eye opening to just have 2%. You said, and even now it's
1.4.
less.
1.4.
Yeah, yeah.
Let me
That
put this in perspective. I don't mean to cut you off since you brought up the statistics. I was doing a little background research on the Caribbean. And so I see that even down in the Caribbean, 90% of the food down there is imported, meaning it's shipped from elsewhere into the island. And when you think ecologically, this is one of the best places in the world to grow food, in the Caribbean, constant sunlight, water. When you think about, when we think about the transatlantic slave trade, one of the reasons of coming over here wasn't about pilgrims being good. It was because, hey, here's a gold mine of where things can be produced. At that time, it was sugarcane, different fruits and vegetables. And so there was an abolitionist up here in the late 1800s, Frederick Douglass, but he talked about food being a tool of oppression, being used as a weapon. If I'm the one feeding you, then it doesn't matter what you think about me. It doesn't matter what you do. I can starve you out. And so when you apply that to 2021, when you look at these statistics, and so, we with B1 Ag, we don't like to get into point and blame or, falling into, victim mindset more so than really being concise about identifying like where are the problems, where are the threats, where are the weaknesses, where are the opportunities and strengths. And so, as I said, we know genetically, physically, hey, we're the perfect people to engage in agriculture. But when you look on the back end and see only 1.4% of us are the primary operators, I'll break it down even more. So up in North America, we have 1.9 billion acres of land. This is just the 48 contiguous states minus Alaska and Hawaii. Black, what we call black, and like I said, black is a very generic term, only owns 0.4% of 1.9 billion acres. Zero, not 4%, 0.4%. When you think about land historically and in ancient times, land is wealth, right? If I own my property, then I can grow what I want here and I can pass this down to my progeny. And so when you find yourself in any group where you have this little access to land, and then you're kind of subject to whoever has this land, whether it was by hook or crook or thievery or however we want to word it, the conversation then has to become, okay, what do we do to get back to the garden? A term we use is get black to the garden. I don't know what your religious ideology is, but theoretically speaking, when you think about the Bible, texts like the Bible, most religious texts, man's original setting per se on this grand stage was in a garden. The closest we can get to whatever put us here, whatever form we want to call it, we didn't have cities, we didn't have markets. We had a garden, we had hands, we had tools, we had one another to cultivate something to eat to get to the next day. And so, yeah, so 1.4% of 3.5 million farmers in North America. On paper, according to the USDA, that's the United States Department of Agriculture, they say it's about 44,000 Black farmers. I would contend it's a lot less because in the US, you can get a farm ID if you have like an acre of land. And that's not to be disparaging, more so than you can see how numbers can be skewed. And when you have this process going on year after year, because a lot of farming, farming is very financial intensive. You need a lot of money to be competitive in a market. And so when you have a government that's subsidizing certain groups of farmers and then leaving other groups to kind of fend for themselves, you can see how you can kind of get moved out of a market. And so our thing is figuring out how can we coalesce our people. All of us eat, all of us have stomachs, regardless of differences of opinions. And so how can we coalesce those of us with melanated skin that have appetites and stomachs to really support these farmers, the few that have been able to remain and keep their land, as well as, which is just as important, how do we cultivate a next generation to where they don't see farming as slavery or see it as something that's substandard. You see what I'm saying?
Plus farming, it's
Exactly.
like it's one of the greatest things you can do. I mean, you're nurturing life, you're bringing forth life. Um, it's empowering. You know, this like I said before, is power in the ability to be able to refuel yourself, to feed yourself. You know, food, clothing, and shelter, those are three pillars of life, and all of them can be grown. So it's a thing where just want our people, our communities to get back to being self-sufficient. And one route that we can definitely tackle to achieve that is through agriculture. You know, because we need to be able to feed ourselves. We need to be able to clothe ourselves. We need to be able to have shelter. And these things can be grown. Now, we encourage farming on a large scale, but we also are very big advocates on gardening and farming on a smaller scale too. Because, you know, it's a thing where we take for granted that we go to the store and there's going to be food there. You know, we take that for granted. This pandemic showed us this is like the first time anybody has went to the store and seen empty shelves. And it should be a very big wake up call. If you never thought about it or didn't never think that could happen, that if I can go to Walmart, I go to Kroger, I go to the grocery store or whatever, and just know that there's food, that's not a given. There's a lot of supply chain disruptions going on. The climate is changing. Weather patterns are changing, and it's all affecting food production and distribution. So just so to stay ahead of any issues, it's just it's a slam dunk. It's common. It's a no brainer that we as a people need to get back to growing our own food to at least secure that much more food security for ourselves and our family. Now we say community, but you know, start with your household. If you want us to fight or you want to fight food insecurity, you know, start with your household, then go to your neighbors, community, region, city. You see what I'm saying? And we'll be able to all reap a grand harvest together.
Thank you so much. You guys touch on so many excellent points. So many excellent points that you touched on. Um, we got to get back to basics. As you would have mentioned, Mr. Harris, food is a basic need, and even when we think about it theoretically, if we want to look at the theory of it, and I go back to my educator hat now. As an educator, I teach about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And in order for you to meet your basic, in order for you to reach self-actualization or to reach a level of satisfaction, your basic needs have to be met. And included in those basic needs are your need for food and shelter and those stuff. But in the basic need, you need food. You need food to be self-sustaining. And there are studies that shows that you have children, and if they're hungry, they're not going to be able to be focused on their education and be focused in school, because the first need is you're hungry. You can't focus on learning. You can't focus on those things. So food security is definitely an important thing in our community. And I also wanted to congratulate you guys too in looking and kind of changing the narrative. And you talked about that, Mr. Claiborn, changing the narrative of what a farmer should look like. And you talked about when you first introduced to farming as a young Black person, you're seeing the slaves in farming. But is more than that. The narrative is more than that. They weren't just, they weren't just slave, but there's there's a there's a a good reason as to why these our ancestors, they were able to sustain themselves. They weren't just slaves, but they were actually, feeding their families. And I also want to congratulate you guys as well. And you talk about your education. You guys are educated, so sometimes there's a narrative to say that, in farming, you have persons who are not as well educated, but you guys, you're educated men. So I want to congratulate you guys and really trying to change the narrative. And so that one, I want to move into our next point, and community and promotion of agriculture and food security within the community context. Oh, there's so many points, Mr. Claiborn. You touch on the Caribbean and your research. You looked at us in the Caribbean and the fact that most of our food is imported. You're absolutely correct. This is a huge issue. We have the sun, we have the sand, we have the sea. We should be able to be self-sufficient and produce our own food, but we're at the stage where most of our food, not just our food, but most of the items that we have are being imported. And so that's an excellent point that you raise. And there's no way that I can deny that you're speaking the absolute truth. And as I would have mentioned before, we moved away from agriculture to focus on our other industries that we thought would give us the easy money. And older persons who were in the industry, they're dying out. The younger persons do not see it. And as you would have talked about in your culture, you saw the Jordans and those things were more appealing to you. But toiling in the sun, that's not appealing. So most of our young persons, they've moved away from agriculture, and our older persons are in the industry and they're dying out. And so we have to make this industry more appealing to our young persons. So I want to congratulate you on the work that you're doing to reach the younger generation. And so we get back to community and promotion. Why is agriculture and food security important for your community? How do you promote agriculture and food security within your community?
So I'm glad you touched on Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and so I'm sure you're aware of the Pavlovian theory with the dog and the dinner bell. It's a social engineering is real. Social marketing is real. I mean, you shouldn't be classified as a conspiracy theorist to really go, because it boils down to how do I sell products? The same way you sell products, you sell lifestyles. There was a reason, going back to my proverbial classroom growing up, that the pictures of scientists would always be this white guy with crazy hair that we call Albert Einstein. And we know that there have been what we call black scientists for millennia, right? But those aren't the pictures we saw. We saw pictures of athletes. And so subconsciously, I would be a liar if I said somebody ever came to me and said, now, you know what, young man, you can never farm. You can never grow anything. Nobody ever said those words to me. It was assumed because of these bright, colorful pictures of somebody that I felt like I resonated with, that I looked like, resembled me. It was assumed, just like this dinner bell, hey, ding, 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 if you don't want to look like this black and white picture of these people out in this field working, which is actually healthier. And Mr. Harris can attest to, athletes break their bodies up to entertain people, right? And the average sports career doesn't last longer, 3 to 5 years. Versus, like you said, some of the farmers, these are some of the most strong, resilient, healthy people you'll meet if they hadn't been working with a whole bunch of the GMOs and all of these other pesticides. But that's another story. The average farmer in North America right now is 65 years old. And so when we talk about community, we believe in this thing called the compensatory logic. And so this proverbial, we'll say the counter. If the counter is spending 20 hours a day, $20 million a year to make you feel like you don't need to produce your food, as a community, we need to promote 21 hours and $21 million to counter that. We don't want to keep this, constant zero. We really want to get back in that direction. So saying that to say just the marketing piece of it alone, outside of the production, outside of the processing, outside of the distribution, outside of the financing, outside of the ag law, you have to market this as something that's important. Up here, we have a Super Bowl. And so every year, Pepsi Cola, you would assume everybody in the world knows about Pepsi by now. You would have had to live under a rock to not know Pepsi, but Pepsi is going to spend millions of dollars for 60 seconds. just to remind the people around the world watching this game that, hey, we have this sugar water, this brown sugar water in this can, this aluminum can. See, if we take the names away, we're talking about natural resources. The sugar, at a time, once again, in the Caribbean was the ones producing that sugar, till one of these crazy haired scientists figured out a way, okay, I can cut them out of this market and I'll just make this unnatural stuff. And I will worry about the diabetes and bad health outcomes later. And so I'm being funny, but not. When we relinquished our direct connection to producing our food, we subjected ourselves to all sorts of unknown chemicals. And so saying that to say you have to market the importance, not just marketing the product, but you have to literally market the importance. The power of music, drugs, alcohol, perverse, sex, they're all natural things that the earth produces, but it's being promoted to us in a way to where we're almost destroying ourselves. We've created like a self-pesticide for those that see our kind as pests. And so now it's like a self-perpetuating thing that's literally being marketed to us. It's marketed because I am hip hop. And so I can never speak disparagingly about hip hop, but I'm also conscious that, wow, if I listen to this X amount of hours out of the day and I'm just kind of not thinking, it'll put you in a hypnotic state where you start mimicking what you're hearing. And so with agriculture, and it's not saying everybody just start making rap songs about farming, but the concept is every angle that's being used to throw us off, you have to address each of those angles, whether you're talking about books. And so I have a series of books. These are basically little kids farming books where all of the characters you see in them are melanated people. We believe in diversity when all tables at the party can have a choice of what we're going to play in this dance hall. And so we got to get to that position where us as a community, and I hate to throw us all in a lump, but hey, the forces that be see us all as one big black entity, right? And so the concept is we have to promote this big black entity as something that produces, and that doesn't start over a year. I think the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act, that was the 1930s, and that's what changed the dynamic in the Caribbean. That's when somebody in somewhere across the ocean decided, okay, I can make better use of these islands by let me get them dependent on me for their food. I know they could produce their own, but by them producing their own, they wouldn't need me. I wouldn't be able. And so I think tourism isn't that the largest industry in the Caribbean. And I mean, once again, this is an area where you can produce some of the best produce. And so how, it's a thing of marketing that idea when we're talking about communities. Yeah, there's a door-to-door piece of it, but you don't want to just go door-to-door knocking on, hey, you need to start growing more. You want to have an agricultural product that somebody in that area grew. Outside of that, we have to be in these schools, not as angry black men and women, but as, hey, whether you're educated in the classroom or educated because you've been out in the mud, people have to see success stories. I gravitated to Michael Jordan and the rappers because we had these big, beautiful, bright posters. They had shoes in the store with these people's signatures on them. And so we literally have to create those pictures. It sounds like I'm simplifying it, but you literally have to create the visual because we're visual learners. Before there was a language to, kind of confuse us to communication, we're visual. We understand symbols. And so, the degree that we're able to change the visuals that we see when we think about agriculture, that's part of the community piece. And then the other, is just understanding community economics. When you're like Mr. Harris was saying, if you don't see yourself as poor, my mom, I'm getting off subject, but my mom told me she grew up in the deep South in what we call Louisiana. She said she didn't know they was poor until she went to high school because they were agriculturalists. They grew, they were commercial farmers. But she had a white teacher tell her, oh, y'all are poor, y'all are impoverished. She didn't know that until somebody told her that. Meaning, oh, I didn't know I was in this so-called, this weakened state, this victim state. And so the same way that somebody came and told a certain layer, of our ancestors or elders that, hey, there's a problem, we have to be able to say, here, hey, young people, here's an opportunity. We have to counter this concept of problem to, hey, here's opportunity.
And then and for me, we're both educated, but we're just gonna get down to just some good old common sense. Who wants to eat? Who likes to eat? We all have to eat. If you don't eat, you'll perish. So if you're talking about where's the money, or chasing this bag, this proverbial bag, this wealth, food is a part of that, because everybody doesn't just want to eat, they have to eat. So the need for food is never going to go away. So those that can provide that food, that's gold, that's money. Growing your own food is just like printing your own money. Even if you don't make money off of it, the fact that you're feeding yourself is very valuable. And the fact that you don't have to pay for that food, you don't have to pay somebody to bring you food, or call Uber Eats, or go to your fast food. You're saving money as well. You're saving money, you're building your health, and health is also wealth. As far as getting the word out, one of the best ways, and Trevor can definitely attest to this, is just getting the people reacclimated to the farm. Doing farm tours. Bring people out to the farm. They interact with the farmers, see what's going on, but also eat a meal sourced primarily from that farm. I mean, food brings people together, and what better way to promote food and growing your own food, and having a demonstration of a great meal, that was grown right there. We have to get back to eating real food. I have that problem too. I have our lives get so busy, and we're so distracted and ripping, hurry, hurry, rush, rush on the move, that we don't. There's a lot of things that we naturally do for ourselves that we've been conditioned to pay for others to do. And as we stated before, it's just all about getting back to the basics. Okay, there's so many things going on, and the internet, you're seeing by being bombarded with so many different images, and there's so many different issues and problems in the world. Step back. Okay, this is life. Okay, now let me get back to the basics, and being able to reimagine what I need to take care of myself. What's really important, and nurture that, what's really important. And one of the most important things as humans on this planet, period, no matter what community you are in, is you need to be able to eat. Because I don't know if you ever seen someone that is hungry. you know uh it gets bad when you have a mass of people hungry. you know Now that's when you're dealing with something dangerous, and especially when we have that ability to not be hungry ourselves. We just have to reach back inside that ancient knowledge that was given to us, and really look at the planet for what it is. And it is, the world is a garden.
Thank you. Thank you. Excellent points. Excellent points. As you would have mentioned, Mr. Harris, we have to get back to basics. We need to eat. And the pandemic has shown us the importance of producing our own food. And the fact that you would have mentioned that it kind of gave us a scary reality of the fact that you could wake up one day and go to the supermarket and find that the items that you used to have in abundance is dwindling down. Supply is dwindling down. So those are definitely important points. And Mr. Claiborn, you also mentioned an important point with us in the Caribbean. Again, you are absolutely right when you said our biggest industry right now is tourism. It has been tourism for a number of years. We've been able to make a lot of money from that industry in the Caribbean. However, um, at the expense of losing some of our most important industries, including the agricultural industry. So those are some important points that you've made. And so I just want to highlight one of your videos. I want to share it. Um, I believe this is one of the videos that you would have made with the kids. So let me see if I can share that.
There's no sound.
Okay, so I don't. Would you like to discuss the efforts that you're making to kind of show reach a younger generation? Sorry.
And so that video, so I recorded that when I was once again doing my Farmer Brown the MC research. It was actually a learning experience for me. So I was actually recording the video as some of my modules to present in the classroom. But what I learned, touching on what Mr. Harris said, was that was the first time all of those students were ever on a farm. And so I was coming from a production aspect of, hey, meet me out at the farm, let's produce this music video. But what I realized was just literally having kids come out to a farm and having a positive experience. It doesn't mean everybody's got to go rap and do a song, more so than just bringing somebody. Because a lot of times we take things for granted. We just assume somebody's been to a farm. We just assume that somebody's had this conversation. But I know up here, the average human being is 3 generations away from a farm. Average is 3 generations away from a farm, meaning mom, dad, mom, granddad, great grandmom probably wasn't on the farm. And these aren't conversations people have. Real quick time back to what you said about the food security. So the average grocery store only has, before COVID, only has 3 days worth of food. This is before the pandemic. 3 days of food. These are your large chains. And this is for space dynamics. Obviously, you don't want to warehouse full of food that might go bad. And so when we really put this in perspective, North America, so we have 390 million people. We have 390 million people to eat. Across what we call planet Earth, 7.6 billion people. All of them eat, and I would say the majority of the planet is modernized. I don't really like that concept, first world, third world. I don't really like those concepts, because I tend to believe the people that are less dependent on this system, less dependent on a card or a piece of paper to eat something that you can pick out of the ground, are more resilient than those that will go hungry surrounded by a garden. But saying that to say, so the video, once again, was just the concept of visuals, really creating a fun visual. I know you know who Bill Cosby is. So when we were growing up, we had Fat Albert in the gang. We had LeVar Burton reading Rainbow. And so it's really tapping into what are the things that excited us as children. And these are seeing images of people that you look like. I wouldn't expect nobody to put these songs on in a dance club. I wouldn't expect nobody to blast these on a radio per se. But for the sake of going to a classroom, introducing this concept of agriculture differently, I mean, you're applying shock value. Where, your major corporations is the missing tile syndrome, basically meaning our eyes are going to go to what's missing. You can have a million different tiles on the ceiling, but our eyes is going to go to this one spot where the tile is missing. And so with Farmer Brown MC, we're looking to create a backwards effect of, okay, we're in this industry called agriculture, and there's this thing missing of melanated people. And so instead of making it a black and white picture, really make it colorful, make it joyous. I will say agriculture is not like growing food is just easy. You do work, you sweat, but this is a good thing. I'm not going to get into giving medical advice, but I would say putting in a good day's work is a great remedy to some of the health illnesses that are affecting people around the world right now. if you understand what I'm saying. But yeah, so really, the video you just showed was about visuals. These are young children. They enjoyed themselves. I wish more important than what you saw was the discussions after we got done filming, because they just wanted to stay out there. I mean, some of them had never had that much space to just run around. Literally, I mean, I doubt 50% of them were thinking about, oh, now I'm just gonna go home and start farming. They were intrigued, and actually some of those students have now enrolled in ag programs. And so, out past what can be reported on my so-called success stories or my final analysis of my research, I saw that this concept being introduced in a more culturally palatable fashion intrigued them. Because what we know with our kids, especially with tech, they all you have to do is plant a seed in their mind. I believe we got star seeds, right? So their mind is going to take it where it needs to go. So I feel like on our level as educators, as community members who care, is just really being conscientious of how we plant the seed. Are we cultivating the soil so the seed will work? You don't just want to throw it down, hey, go farm. Now we have to put a little bit more effort, because there was effort put into making us not see ourselves as a part of this industry.
And plus, we need to really pay attention to the way our kids are being socialized. Right now, our kids are being raised by social media, different types of social media platforms, and what they see through their phones and television. Um, I was growing up as a kid. I was an athlete, so it was all about playing, getting outside and playing. And a lot of our kids don't get outside and play. But the interesting thing was when you introduce these kids out there to the farm, what kid doesn't want to play in the dirt? What kid doesn't want to, ooh, what's that? Explore. What doesn't want to, just interact with the animals? It's natural. It's a natural thing, and it's like technology and advancements. It's taking, that's not natural, but naturally, we as humans, when we get back in that environment, it's just like a fish getting back in the water. We can take off. And here in America, young Black men are the most unemployed sector of this country. However, in agriculture, every year, there's 30 to 40,000 unfilled jobs. And that's just because we just don't know about them, or we just don't show interest. So a lot of our own social problems can literally be healed through agriculture. Okay, they want us over there in agriculture, but we have to be made aware of the opportunities. There's a lot of jobs there, there's a lot of money there, there's freedom there, entrepreneurial endeavors available there. The whole every process that it takes to get the food from the ground to the table. There are different job and employment, entrepreneurial opportunities along each step, and we need to infuse ourselves back in these steps. If not for society, trying to in a large way, at least in a small way. Like I said, starting with your home, expanding out to your community, into your region, and then starting from the ground up.
Thank you for mentioning that, Mr. Harrison. Mentioning that the opportunities are available there out there, but one question that I want to raise is: are they being incentivized as it pertains to making them appealing and attractive to young persons? Is the government supportive of farmers? And I know within my country, there have been attempts to kind of incentivize the farming industry for young persons. I don't know if it's the same in your country, if there are efforts to kind of because it's a hard industry, as Mr. Claiborn would have mentioned. Is You have to have financial backing to maintain a farm. It's not cheap. But we can start from somewhere. We have backyard farming, and You could start within your home, you can start within your community. We definitely had a lot of excellent points raised today, and I would definitely like to welcome you back to continue this talk, because we want to look at how COVID-19 has impacted food security within your communities, and we want to talk about other issues as well. So as we close, do you have anything else you would like to add? If you want to share your pages, this is not the end. I definitely we want to continue this dialogue, but we're gonna end this session today, and we're gonna pick it up in another session. But as we close off the session today, do you have any final thoughts you want to share? Any pages that you have?
Well, I would just like to say, well, our podcast is called B1AG. Uh, B1, that's that we really look at servicing our Black community first. And ag, short for agriculture, B1AG. And also, if you look at B1AG, you can see the bag. And that's where the money is, that's where the wealth is in agriculture. And you can find us on Facebook. When we go live, we stream on brothersonsports.com, boss. And we're also at the blackbosschannel.com on YouTube. And we're being shared even on Fly Nubian Network and yourblackworld.com as well. Hey man, I hope at the end of the day, it may come a time where even though we're up here in America and y'all down in the Caribbean, we may need to band together to make sure that we all eat. You're saying 90% of your food is being imported. We need to have our own connections when it comes to food, just to make sure that we all can eat. Again, it's a very important thing. I hope that everyone who hears this message and sees this message gets it in their mind. Yeah, it is a good idea to start with one plant, start with one pot. You can start with one seed and one cup, but get those seeds in the ground and you'll be surprised. And I think you'll be very pleased if you really put in the work at your harvest.
B1AG. I want the bag. Work my way from a garden to a track. Flip it from a track to a plot full of acres. Do it for the farmers and producers and the makers. I just want to say, I hope nobody took what we were saying as something disparaging. We both truly, genuinely believe this is a great opportunity. 2020, the irony of 2020, I feel like a lot of things were put in focus, not only for the B1 community, but for the world. I tend to, no, I know if we're going to get any sort of balance back on this planet, we do have, as a melanated family, have to reclaim our place as stewards of the land. Uh, I'm not necessarily a proponent of violence, but there's nothing like hitting that soil with that hoe, working that ground, getting those seeds in the ground. We see a lot of social and political changes happening around the world, and I speak from experience that you'd be surprised how many allies you have, whether they intentionally want to be allies or not, that have run out of ideas. And so the only group left on this planet to really figure out how we're going to feed 7.6 billion people will come from the original people who were put in the garden. And once again, everything starts with a seed. And last thing I'm gonna say, touching on the question you had asked about, all of these funds and resources being made available to try to intrigue younger farmers. You can't start at high school. You can't wait till they're in 12th grade and then suddenly expect them to thrive in college or, immediately run to a trade. It literally starts with those 3rd through 5th graders, even younger, just creating positive experiences outdoors. It doesn't matter what your neighborhood looks like. Not all of us come up in nice, pristine neighborhoods, but there's green spaces just about anywhere you go to where you have a walk, where son, daughter, see mother, father, uncle, cousin, just outdoors having a picnic. Some people don't like bugs, but can you withstand those bugs for a couple hours, 30 minutes out of a week? just for your offspring or the people you care about to see that you're engaging with this outdoor climate. I imagine our ancestors would have loved to have a tool like social media to project these positive images, these brown faces, just enjoying this beautiful garden that we find ourselves in. But yeah, I really want the people to understand we are in our finest hour right now. Not only our community, but the world needs us to step up, or no, I say step back up to where we already were. And the degree that we can do that, a lot of things, a lot of these perceived barriers will start breaking down.
The world is a garden.
Thank you. Excuse me. So thank you, guests, for sharing today. And I would like to thank our viewers for listening to our talk. I would like to thank our guests. And sorry, feeling under the weather. I do apologize. So thank you. We had an awesome talk, and we definitely want to continue this discussion. So thank you.
Remember this, if you really want to know something,
Learn how to grow something.
Thank you for joining us today. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.